live in a city where children are now killing children. That's not acceptable. Not to anyone listening, not to anyone watching. You'll notice that there are 5 of us up here and there are 6 chairs. What you see before you is a united front. A group of officials that will bring every resource to bear to tackle this issue. So who's missing? The community is the one that we want in that last chair. And while we have many special guests here today, I'm so pleased to see dozens and dozens of you behind these cameras, because we represent we the people, and that's what it's going to take in order to really turn the tide of what we're seeing here in the Port City. I actually wanted to start today by reading a quote from the man who this building is named for. This is what Dr. Martin Luther King said, and I want, as you listen to this, to think about the violence we're seeing on the street, because what I see, and have seen in 17 years as a prosecutor here in Wilmington, is this cycle of violence where today's victim is tomorrow's defendant, where people don't report the crimes that occur against them. They take justice into their own hands instead of reporting it to law enforcement or bringing it into the courthouse. And we see more and more violence out on the street where innocent children get caught in the crossfire. Hear now the words of Dr. Reverend Martin Luther King. The ultimate weakness of violence is that it is a descending spiral, begetting the very thing it seeks to destroy. Instead of diminishing evil, it multiplies it. Through violence, you may murder the liar, but you cannot murder the lie nor establish the truth. Through violence, you may murder the hater, but you do not murder hate. In fact, violence merely increases hate. So it goes. Returning violence for violence multiplies violence, adding deeper darkness to a night already devoid of stars. Darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that. Dr. King also said, our lives begin to end the day we become silent about things that matter. And we tell defendants that they have a right to remain silent. The people in this community don't. And when we think about seeking the truth, which is the highest aim of law enforcement and those of us who take an oath to uphold the Constitution in a court, I want to remind you that verdict means to speak the truth. What do we need in order to have verdicts? We need witnesses. We need people to come forward when they see things that aren't right. We need people to text a tip if they fear retaliation. And I know the chief and the sheriff can say a lot more about the recent efforts to try and increase the reporting of crime. I want to be very specific on some of the things that we're rolling out today that this community has not seen. But before I do that, this is not a new conversation that I've had with this community or any of the other officials that are here today. And I want to remind you of where we've come, because we are a great community. But to be truly great, we need to redouble our efforts right now and remind ourselves that these are not black or white children dying in the streets of Wilmington. They're God's children. This is not a political issue. It's a moral issue. This is not just about life and liberty. It's also about the pursuit of happiness. It really is about schools. It really is about jobs. It really is about all of us caring about every one of our children. And so what have we done over this last decade? I've been district attorney and working in team-like fashion to really try and end youth violence and engage the community. I want to first say something about crime prevention, and then I want to talk for a second about crime suppression. Crime prevention, I say, has 5 parts, what I call the 5 arms of the starfish. And what I mean by that is that we brought 5 groups together to give our young people a sense of belonging, where they have ownership, membership, and a sense that they can achieve. Because when children don't have that hope, when they don't have that sense of belonging, when they don't have structure, in other words, they find that in each other. And the hope, the structure that so many of us grow up with, the family, for many of these children, they don't have a strong group around them, so they find it in peers. And that's why we're seeing more and more gang violence. We as the village elders, the adults, need to give these young people a sense of belonging. And so what are those 5 arms of the starfish? The 5 things that we as a community do to put our hands around these children and say, you belong. Those 5 things, in no particular order, that are part of this community, that I hope you've seen we've been very intentional about trying to engage, are the schools, The business community, the nonprofits, the faith-based community, and the government. And if you think about it, those are the members of the Blue Ribbon Commission on the Prevention of Youth Violence that we've been working on for several years. And you've seen some great work in the schools. You just heard Chairman Dawson talking about the school to prison pipeline and how we're trying to end that together by law enforcement working with principals and administrators and teachers. You've seen the business community really step up in a number of ways. You know, when I went and met with President Obama back in October, one of the big reasons I was invited to do that was because of what's happening here with our business community with hometown hires, now merged with Phoenix, to really create jobs. Did you know 19 people last month got into jobs through that agency? The street's always been an equal opportunity employer. I'm calling on the business community to put some of these young men and women to work who are in poverty. That's really what this is about. Number 3, the faith-based community, and we all have a role to play. You heard the words of Dr. King. Regardless of who you pray to, if you pray to anyone, this is a moral issue. You know, when the mayor, the chief, and Judge Faison and I go down to Charleston in just a couple of weeks to meet with former Mayor Joe Riley. For 40 years he was their mayor. Their finest moment occurred after an officer-involved use of force caught on film. Their finest moment occurred after innocent people were slaughtered in a church. They didn't return violence with violence. They loved justice and mercy, and they walked humbly. And you know what? They were a model to the world. They did something that protesters in Ferguson and an indictment in Baltimore couldn't do. They brought peace. There is a role for our faith-based community, and let's keep working together on that. And then there's the nonprofits, and we've done so much good work with our nonprofits. We shouldn't lose sight of the wonderful work that they're doing. Think about a place of incarceration that's now a place of transformation like the Harrelson Center, and the great work that we're doing to really come together right now as a whole group to work with needed mental health, to work with drug treatment because we can't arrest our way out of all these situations. These are groups that need our support. You spend $1 to save 8 incarceration. And finally, it's about government. And yes, the government does have a role, and as the law enforcement official tasked with upholding the Constitution here in New Hanover and Pembroke County, I want to talk to you about something that we frequently have in these others, but moving forward, I will. Because as I said, and as the mayor, Ms. Dawson, I'm confident that our chief and sheriff will say the same thing, we live in a time where all of the tools are going to be put out of the tool belt and we're going to be using them. You have heard about the criminal laws being enforced now for years, but one thing that I don't usually talk about is the civil laws. You heard just vague reference to that back in around Christmas time when we talked about the hotels and motels on Market Street and some of the crime that is festering on that corridor. I just emerged from a meeting with the city attorney and a hotel-motel owner, and I said the same thing to him that I'll say to gang members and to people who are committing crime in our community. You need to shake it up. If you don't clean up your act, we're going to clean it up for you. We are going to take your property. If that means having to seize a hotel or a home or a car, we're going to do it. We've talked a lot about life and liberty. We have seen young people die in gang violence. We have seen young men locked up forever for it. And I will continue to do that. But what we need to focus a lot more on is talking the language of business to people who are apparently committing crimes for some business gain. And so what I want to particularly turn your attention to is the North Carolina Street Gang Suppression Act, found in 14-50.16, that defines a pattern of criminal street gang activity. You will see that there are injunctions that can be served upon gang members, verified members, that means they can't be hanging out with each other. The First Amendment gives us all the right to peacefully assemble. It does not give people the right to assemble for a violent and criminal purpose. And if that means that we're going to have to enjoin some people from hanging out with each other and beating children into these gangs, we're going to do it. And the next thing is taking their property. I now turn your attention to 1450-42, real property used by criminal street gangs declared a public nuisance. It talks about the same things that we've already introduced the community to in talking about the Market Street corridor. When people are selling drugs, when they are selling humans, that's called human trafficking. Both of those things are fought specifically with these laws. And if it means that we're going property to get their attention, we're going to do it. And so you will see that there is a task force that has been formed, and I know we've had many task forces in the past, but we are working with the vice narcotics and the gang community to really now focus very specifically on giving voice to these civil remedies. The city attorney and I have already begun much important work on this. You will see in the days ahead that we're only getting started. I promise you we will continue to faithfully uphold the Constitution, and that means making sure that everybody succeeds. We want you to succeed. We are going to be there with you in the pursuit of happiness. But when you take life, we're going to take your liberty. And if you're going to use our assets locally to commit crime, we're going to take those assets from you. We are going to bring every resource to bear on this issue because our children are worth it. Thank you very much.